Hello and welcome back to this Downplay Dualistic Crusade. In this video I'm going to go over the latest book finds I've had at local bookshops and other interesting odds and ends. And as always, it's a surprise every time what I turn up, and things I've either been looking for a long time or sort of had on my radar, or some things every once in a while I've never even encountered, and I'm amazed how the heck did this end up at one of my local bookstores. First, we'll start with a book that I believe I leafed through a number of years ago, but I've read various biographies and books, but I never was able to own a copy until now of the beautiful coffee table book on David Lean entitled An Intimate Portrait. This is written by Lean's widow, Sandra Lean, and Barry Chaddington. This was done in, I believe, about 2001 or so, but it's a really nice, hefty tome. It's definitely a coffee table book, and it talks about how Lean said if he was ever to write an autobiography, he would want it done in pictures. So, of course, this is a very visually oriented book, but it is lovingly done. It's very hard to do on camera because it's a big coffee table book. It's in really excellent shape, particularly for a big coffee table book that's a paperback, but it is loaded with stills from the films and Lean's personal life as well. It's hard to do all of this on camera. The paper stock is really nice, has a nice glossy sheen to it, so the images really come across very, very well. Case in point, of course. There's a lot of lovely double page spreads like that throughout, but it's absolutely wonderful to see a book like this for Lean, who of course is one of the masters of images in terms of the cinematic medium. And of course it would make sense that if he had a book, he would of course want it to be visually oriented like this. So this is very much in keeping with those wishes. This is a great book to have on the shelf for Lean to pull off and and just bask in his work and life all over again. There are great biographies and books on Lean, but this is just one I'd always wanted to get a copy of for myself. Next is a book that I've always wanted to read from Columbia University's Film and Culture series. This is a nice tome on PreCode Hollywood with the famous Thou Shalt Not photograph used for the cover. This is actually, seems like it was used as a textbook at some point, hence it has the textbook sale sticker still on it. But this is the Thomas Dotery book that, again, is part of the Columbia University series. But it is a really nice, hefty tome, clocking in at about 400 pages, all on the magic of PreCode Hollywood. It does have a number of black and white stills throughout, but it is very much a critical text and history of the pre-code period, pretty much going as it credits from 1930 to 1934, which is the point at which, as many people have called it, when the code was given teeth finally, and the wonderful magical period of early talkies where you could actually be as risque as you wanted to be. That was long gone due to individual state censor boards and public pressure from various groups and institutions, essentially causing Hollywood to finally not just say they were going to monitor themselves, but to actually then do something about it. And of course, these films, while they're wonderful and magical, didn't necessarily mean that you would get to see them in their original form in your area, because there were local individual censorship boards, and not just states, but also different cities, and they all varied like crazy. So unfortunately, some of these pre-code classics would get butchered and chopped up all over the place, depending on just what part of the country you were in. But still, this is one I've always wanted to read, and it's a really great text on the pre-code period. It's just been on my wish list for a long time. Next is a book from the great University Press of Kentucky. This is a 1998 edition of Hollywood as Historian. So this is focusing on particular titles, looking at their cultural legacy, but also their historical context and how it compares to the actual period they were made in and depicting. So anytime I find a University Press of Kentucky film book, and it's in good shape and it's inexpensive, I'm definitely going to pick it up. So I've heard of this one before, and I think I've read part of this in a library once maybe, but I can't remember for sure. But again, anytime I see University Press of Kentucky, I'm like, okay, yes, this is definitely of recommendation, because it is from them, and they always do the best critical works and have done so now for decades. they're also usually pretty expensive. So finding them used for cheap is something that doesn't happen. So, of course, yes, I'm going to get film books if they're cheap. Also found a nice hardcover from University Press of Kentucky. This is 2005's Hollywood's West, so it's a book from their film series about in Western studies, essentially. So I've never read this, but again, it's rare to stumble across one of their books in the wild, and especially usually not in a hardcover edition. This has a little wear, but otherwise it's in perfect shape. So, and of course, being a Western geek, the fact that there is a Western studies book that I haven't read yet, and it seems pretty lengthy, about 300 pages, then I'm like, how did this get here? It has my name on it. Then moving on to tie-ins and novelizations, but still, of course, film-related because it's me, I couldn't resist this cheap copy of the Face Off tie-in novelization. I have such a weakness and fondness for reading novelizations of films, whether it's films I'm into or not really into. I think it's really a lost sort of form of the marketing campaign of a film. And a lot of times the novels can be quite good or really expound upon things in the film that, aren't really gone into, or of course have deleted bits of material because they're usually working from earlier drafts. So I always find it fascinating to read through a tie-in novelization, and this is just a nice copy that I found in the bargain bin. I also found Volume 2 of the wonderful Titan Omnibus series of the Planet of the Apes novelizations. These are really wonderful, very thick paperbacks that actually collect all the various novelizations, starting with what was written for the original films, then going into the novelizations and things based on the television series and other things. It runs through 4 volumes, I believe, now. So I'm picking these up one at a time when I find them. But even at list price, these are $10 or $15 a pop, and they're quite inexpensive for the sheer amount of content you get in these. And a lot of these books had been out of print for a long time, or you have to get the vintage paperbacks and try to find them in good shape. So it's a really great value. This particular volume is 700 pages long, and it has the novelizations originally done for the forever underrated classic Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and then David Gerrold of Star Trek fame did the novelization for Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Then this also includes the novelization done for the 2001 Tim Burton remake, which I've been meaning to read because that film is such a mess, but I'm curious to see what the novelization might do with it. So it was nice for them to include it in here to sort of pad out another super thick paperback volume of Planet of the Apes novelization. So I have now this volume. I believe I have volumes 3 and 4, so I just have to find the first one. But this was a great thing for Titan to do, and again, it's a fantastic value because even at list price, this is only $10. So it's a really nice value for the money. And again, these had not been reprinted before, so they were quite rare and uncommon for the early books. So I think this is a really great example of a reissue campaign done right that also doesn't break your wallet. So changing genres a little bit, but this is also a phenomenal value. I am an absolute sucker for these things. There's quite a number of them now, but this is just one of the great Black Lizard, Otto Penzler curated mystery collections in these wonderful big oversized paperbacks that I had not gotten around to yet. And it's perfect timing because, of course, we're getting closer to the end of the year, so I will be going through this in December for sure, of the big book of Christmas mysteries. If you've never seen one of these compilations from Black Lizard before, basically Otto Penzler, who has a incredible knowledge of mystery fiction and literature, puts together these wonderful oversized paperbacks. This one crams in 60 tales, all dealing with Christmas or the holiday season, and of course murders and all kinds of fun stuff that it warms the heart to think that there are so many holiday mysteries, doesn't it? So these are wonderful values for the money. They're all in these nice oversized large paperback collections. They are double column style, so they pack in even more material than you realize. This one is 60 stories. It's about 700 pages long. They got started with these back in the mid 2000s, I think it was, with the really great big book of pulp stories. And they've done, I knew at least 5 or 6. I have 2 or 3 of these now. I've been wanting to get this one to read around the holiday season. So it was a surprise finding one of these in the wild. It does have a little bit of wear, but that's kind of natural to get with these because they will get kicked around a bit. And even if you were to buy one and get it shipped to you, it's probably going to get some dings in shipping because it is a thinner paperback. But it is still really sturdy. The binding on these is always really nice, but you'll be pulling this off the shelf a lot because these are wonderfully put together and curated. The ones I've read so far I really enjoy, and they're wonderful volumes to have to just pull off the shelf whenever you feel like it and just dive into a bunch of mystery stories and short stories, but all based around a central theme. So I think they've done about 10 or 15 of these now, and I really one day would like to get the whole set because these are all wonderfully done. But this is perfect because I will get to read this now in December, which is perfect timing. Then moving on to comics for a second, this was a really nice find. This is one of the out-of-print and now increasingly difficult to find Dark Horse omnibuses of their Star Wars reprints. So they did all of these in nice, very compact paperback editions that are relatively affordable, but since they lost the license, they obviously, now all Star Wars comics are under Disney, and they are doing reprints. But they haven't reprinted a lot of things and a lot of classic EU material. But the big problem is they finally reprinted the classic Marvel Star Wars from the 70s and 80s. But they did so and they recolored them and they tried to modernize them as much as possible, which really does not fit with the Marvel Star Wars. So I'd always wanted to read all of them, but outside of collecting the original comics, which is difficult and expensive to do and very time consuming, your best bet is to go for the old Dark Horse omnibuses from the early 2000s. There are 5 volumes of these, and I have the first one, so I managed to find the 5th one. Now, these are all titled a long time ago in terms of these. That's the title they gave to the Marvel Star Wars reprints. This is the 5th and final volume, so there are 5 volumes in this set, and these are the original in terms of the color. So as you can see, all kinds of very bold and very 70s and 80s coloring goes on here. You will not find any of this in the Disney reprints, at least as far as I'm aware. They've only done a chunk of the Marvel series, but again, all modernized and recolored, and that's something that I really can't get on board with. And particularly for these, because they have such a particular sense of style and fun and energy, the last thing you want is to see them with modern colors slapped all over, because part of the iconic status of the Marvel Star Wars comics is really how wild and very comic book in spirit they can get in terms of the color being very intensive. And also it suits the stories, because I've read some of the modern recolored versions and it just doesn't, it's not the same. So I would very much recommend staying away from those, and that's why it's getting more difficult to get these on the used market, because they're out of print, they lost the license, but you'll have to track these down to get the original experience of the Marvel Star Wars. So now I have 2 of the 5 volumes. Hopefully I can find the other 3. I saved the best for last. This one was a wonderful find, and finally being able to get one closer to having all 4 in this set, which are all incredibly rare and difficult to track down. So I finally got another of the 4 volumes in the Find Your Fate series of the James Bond Choose Your Own Adventures. These were all done by Ballantine as a means to compete with the very popular Choose Your Own Adventure books, but it's the same sort of format. They called it Find Your Fate. But interestingly, what they did was they did at least 2 major licensed characters. So they did they did Indiana Jones books in this with really nice covers, and then they did 4 James Bond books, and all of these were tied into the marketing campaign for A View to a Kill. So they all ostensibly are starring Roger Moore's James Bond, and some feature Max Zorin, and I have 2 of the others. This now makes the 3rd. There are 4 of them, and it is very difficult and expensive to get all 4, particularly if you're trying to get them all in one go. So I've had to piece them together one at a time, and I've found one in the wild. I managed to find this copy on eBay for rather cheap, and then it's actually in quite nice shape for one of these. Usually when one of these turns up, it's on the pricey side, and it will have quite a bit of wear because these were obviously intended for children, and because they're your choose your own adventure, you are having to flip back and forth many times to get to different pages. So the first thing to get wear will probably be the spine, obviously. These do have page illustrations, which is really nice. They are in black and white, but you even have some nice bits of illustration in the front. I will say, just skimming through this, because I haven't got to do the whole look at all the different experiences yet, this does seem to be, of the four, the most actually tied to the film. Zoran does appear in one of the others, and it deals with computers and in the mid-1980s. But this one seems like it's directly trying to adapt parts of the film's plot. So this does seem to be, of the four, the most directly tied to the film. And you see, obviously the Golden Gate Bridge here, and I believe it starts at the Eiffel Tower, and Pola Ivanova and Zoran and Mayday are in the story. So this one, I think, is the most A View to a Kill of the four. But these are a fascinating part of the Bond history, and also, most amusingly, when you screw up, you can actually kill James Bond in the book. So it's pretty much the only time that happens in the world of printed Bond, and it's rare for books of this type to actually have results that could be that negative. I think that was something more exclusive to the Find Your Fate series, because I think the Choose Your Own Adventure series that sort of started this was you didn't really you weren't able to die a lot. You couldn't screw up so bad that it would result in a you died, game over type thing, go back to the beginning. But that does happen in these, and it does add a bit to the stakes of reading it, and really try not to screw up, because then you're dead, so you have to start over. So as always, it's fun reading this type of book, and it definitely gives you flashbacks to reading these books as a kid. But this was something I didn't know about for the longest time. And once I found out about it, and it being tied to A View to a Kill, I've been trying to get all four at a decent price. So now this is the third, and I'm just missing the fourth one, which is Barracuda Run. So hopefully I can find that at some point pretty soon. And then I'd love to do a video about all four of them. There is a great bit about the history and development of these. A whole section is devoted to them in the Mark Edlitt's Lost Adventures of James Bond book, which is a must for all Bond fans. I reviewed that on this channel, but if you're curious to know more about these, he has a whole section on these in there, and he also interviews some of the original authors too, which is really fascinating, getting this sort of production background behind these. So that's all for what I've discovered in terms of book hunting. Again, everything here is from local bookstores and just haunting around various book sales and things, all except for Strike It Deadly, which was a really nice eBay find. I will admit, I set up a saved search just for the James Bond Find Your Fate books, and every once in a while they pop up on eBay, but they're usually quite pricey, so it's very rare to find them even on eBay. I've found two in the wild and now gotten one on eBay, and it's been a couple years that I've sort of tried to find all four at a decent price. So hopefully I can find that fourth one soon. So as usual, I hope this has been fun and at least somewhat informative to hear me talk more and more about books and book collecting. Hopefully you saw something here you might want to check out for yourself, or something you remember reading a long time ago and would like to reread. So I would like to say, as I do in all of these videos, keep supporting your local independent bookstores to help keep them in business. Keep reading print books, and thanks ever so much for watching.